I quickly reached the long, thin basement's far wall. Here in the partitioned part of the basement, Grandpa had put drywall and framing over the bare concrete foundation. Well, it had to go. The wrecking bar punched through the drywall like tissue paper, and rather than exposing insulation in the gray concrete, there was black space behind it. I stuck my head in the small hole, my headlamp illuminating what was clearly a fairly large space behind the wall. I looked to my left, and right along the wall, there wasn't a door. What the hell, Grandpa? Some kind of hidden space? It was the work of moments to make the hole between the frame big enough to step through, and with one last kick, I stepped into the darkness. The room wasn't very large, but honestly, it was sizable enough that I should have noticed that the basement wasn't as long as it should have been. It was dark, but my headlamp showed me that it wasn't empty. On the short walls to my left and right, I saw 3 large metallic cylinders attached to the wall. Thick black cables ran down from the cylinders and snaked along the floor to what was directly in front of me. At first, I thought it was just a really large television. It swiftly became clear to me that wasn't the case. The frame mounted on the back wall was the full height of the basement, about 10 feet, and about 6 feet wide. It was a simple rectangular black frame of some shiny material framing. I approached the strange frame cautiously, the wrecking bar forgotten in my left hand. The material of the frame felt cool and smooth under my hand. There wasn't even any dust. I couldn't tell from touching it if it was metal or plastic or something else. It felt solid, whatever it was. I looked over my shoulder and saw a hidden door in the wall behind me, a few feet over to the right from where I'd made my hole. My light flashed off something shining on the wall in front of me. When I swung my head back, a small metal plate hung on the concrete with cables running down the wall into a mass of more cables near the floor. On the front of the plate was a small indentation in an odd shape. It took me a fuzzy-brained moment to remember where I'd seen that shape before. I fished my keyring out of my parka pocket and held up the metal fob that had come with the keys. It was exactly the same shape, a sort of tapered rectangle. On a whim, I pressed the fob into the indentation. High-pitched, whirring noises started at my right and left. Small green and red lights on the wall-mounted cylinders blinked on. The whirring sounds rose and pitched to painfully high, and then, finally, inaudible. At the other end of the basement, my phone played the next song on the playlist. The opening guitar riff of I Drink Alone wafted across the space between. With a loud click, the frame in front of me filled with the image of a room lit only by flickering red lights. The floor was covered with unidentifiable trash, and right at the edge of the light I could barely make out a doorway. What the hell? It is a TV! I mused to myself. This was some high-tech stuff. That frame had been empty, and now it was showing me a really high-resolution image. I could only guess it was some kind of projector, but it definitely wasn't projecting it onto the concrete behind the frame. I reached out to touch the image. My hand had just reached the image when reality seemed to lurch around me. I instinctively threw my hands out to catch my balance, but my feet caught on something and I fell. My wind left me as I landed on piles of hard trash. Luckily, my thick parka cushioned my fall. There was a loud metallic clatter as my wrecking bar hit the metal floor beside me. I realized that it had become colder, and I could no longer hear George Thorogood and the Destroyers. Panicked, I scanned around. My headlamp showed me the ruined room I had seen on the screen, and on one wall I saw my basement for a split second before the image disappeared with a click, and the red lights around the black frame went dark.